Okay. So, hi everyone. My name is Phil Spicer. I'm the events chair at IACEAT, and we are delighted to welcome you to this global webinar about the four pillars of arts-based research. And um, IACEAT, who is the sponsor for this, is an international arts therapy and education organization. We like to believe that we are helping to promote all of the arts therapies and all of the arts in education. And we do this through an East-West dialogue, a North-South dialogue, and we like to believe that through creating channels of communication and exploring just what's happening in the globe, we are promoting the arts therapies and education through every organization in terms of interdisciplinary connection. And we welcome you and encourage you to join IACEAT as a member if you are not already. These webinars are free of charge to members, and membership we try to keep at an incredibly reasonable rate so that everyone can participate. So without any further ado, um, I would like to introduce we have two curators today, Hilde Wengroe and Michal Lev, and both living and working in the state of Israel, both doing incredible work. Hilda with dance therapy, Michal with art therapy. They both teach at the School for Society and Arts at Ono and work internationally. Hilda is our research committee and Michal is on the executive committee. So if you'd like to learn more about IACEAT, reach out to Hilda, reach out to Michal, reach out to myself. Now, Michal, would you like to take over, please?
Thank you, Phil. Thank you for that. Hi, everyone across the globe. And thank you very much for joining our fourth webinar in the series Research and the Arts. So I am Michal, and I'm very honored to curate this session with Hilda Van Groover. This session is mainly concerned with the different names and definitions to research with art, whereas some relate to research in art, being the tools and the means of investigation, and others that relate to research in relation to art, in which art is studied by other research means. So we shall present four research methodologies that involve art: performance as research, arts-informed research, artistic research, and art-based research. We've gathered a professional panel of researchers who will demonstrate the unique ways art was interweaved in their research methods. And the webinar will conclude with an open discussion between these panel of presenters, in which they will share their thoughts and ideas about the pillars of research and the arts. So, without further ado, I am delighted to introduce our first panelist. Dr. Refiloe Lepere is a storyteller, playwright, drama therapist, lecturer, and facilitator. Refiloe is also a writer, a director, an embodied learning practitioner, a curriculum developer, and strategy advisor to multifunctional clients in global settings. Her plays have been performed in multiple international stages. She travels across the world performing, presenting, and facilitating workshops on the connection between aesthetics and politics, with a focus on dynamics of race, gender, and coloniality. So Refiloe, we'll talk about and demonstrate performance as research and the aesthetic of care. So here's
Thank
to you.
you. Thank you so much, Michal. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for also being here. And thank you so much to the virtuosic staff at IACEAT for inviting me and for allowing me to be able to share my work and to be present with everyone. I really don't take it for granted that when we spend time, we spend ourselves with each other. So I'm really grateful for being here and being able to share this work and my work with everyone. I'm going to share my screen because I have a PowerPoint. Um, so, a brief overview of myself. As I said, my name is Dr. Refiloe Lepere, and I'm based in South Africa, in Pretoria. And the work that I do is work around theater making. And this presentation is a short way, it's kind of like a summary of my work as a theater maker and look using theater and performance as a way of research. Um, and I had started doing this performances research in my MA program at NYU, which was a long time ago. Now it feels like eons ago, right? In 2011, 2012, I did my MA around performances research, and um, that started my journey around thinking about how is performance. Not only is it healing, because I'm a drama therapist and a trained trauma therapist, and drama therapy and a drama therapist in general, but also how is performance also a method that can help us understand and make sense. So with that, the background of that work, um, and this is the play that I did in terms of my performance as research then. So to think about performance and explore it as not only an art making process, but also as an everyday experience, but also as a research method. And then I had done a play called Black in the Box, the trauma of having to act white in order to succeed, the trauma of being black and having to act white in order to succeed. And through that play making, I then created and understood some concepts about the world and where I was functioning in. So, in this moment in my life, therefore, I then um, reimagine and think about this idea of what does it mean to therefore use performance to ask a question. And in this moment, then I then created a research, and the research that I wanted to understand at the time was how can performance help us better understand the experiences and the role of a domestic worker living in South Africa? And part of what happens that in South Africa, the domestic worker is a really important figure in our lives. She's very present in our historical understanding of the Black female body, because I would walk into spaces as a Black woman and people assume I am the lady who's supposed to be making them tea or do something, right? There's a way that we dress. Our traditional outfits also have a way that they speak and they feed into this concept that suddenly all Black women are domestics, right? So then that became a very interesting concept for me. What is then the differentiation and how do we think about the role of the domestic worker in this context? So therefore thinking about how can then performance, because people have written about the domestic worker, the issues of worker and employee issues. There's a beautiful monograph by Professor Jacqueline Koch called Maids and Madams that really engages around what this role and the engagement with the madam is. But for me, then I thought about how then does performance help me understand this? But also more importantly, what took me further was then this idea of how performance gives us a creative agency and purpose for how do we think of housework and this role in a very different way. So I then created a play called Between Sisters that became a way of questioning. So at that moment in time when I'm trying to figure out what is the question I want to ask, I was still struggling, trying to make sense of it. Then I created this play called Between Sisters. And in this play, the play is about two sisters who are, so it's about Black madams and Black domestic workers. And to think about what is this moment, this differentiation or this individuality or this invisibility that we think about domestic workers. And it's like between sisters because of both are Black women, and what is it that these Black women can think about in terms of are they sisters, are they related, are they not sisters, and what is that then concept of really fully recognizing problem. I also wanted to understand this idea of invisibility and the absent bodies in space. So when we think about, when we think about research, a lot of bodies are absent from it because of the research is about the cognitive. And for me, I really pulled from Gloria Anzaldúa and the work of Sheree Moraga around when they're thinking about the theory in the flesh. And so they're making a claim and a rebellion against the existing paradigms of knowing, and where they're saying we get dissociated from ourselves, and the living experience becomes something else. But what we want to say is that our intellectual and our public and our everyday lives can transgress genre, method, content, and disciplines. So therefore, theory becomes not only just a space for emanating, but it becomes a space where we can live, breathe, and experience ourselves in the everyday. It is also a breaking of boundaries, crossing borders, claiming fragmentation and hybridity. So theory in the flesh for me then therefore means also this idea of my physical reality, my life, my skin color, my land, my concrete, wherever I am, my sexual longings fuse and become a way of creation. And from this moment of creating and making, where I was worried about the invisibility and what invisibility does, I then started creating work with some domestic workers. And we started making plays, and this is a scene from one of our rehearsals and warm-ups. And through creating these three distinct plays, so there's Between Sisters, which was a play that was done for theater and in a very particular theater space. From then, we then started creating a lot of plays with the domestic workers around how do we explore our own roles and performances. And through creating plays, the play making, so being in rehearsal, doing the play, being together became the way of collecting data. So I use performance as a way to ask a question, and then I use performance as a way to collect the data. So now we're creating and making plays. And this was also about, for me, was then the plays became a place where they can reveal their lives and think about what does it mean to take on roles. So part of what happened a lot in the plays was a lot of roles that we were taking on was roles about life, about their children, about their loved ones, about their partners. And so to really understand what does it mean to be living in those spaces and taking up all of these roles. And then through that, from being part of that, I realized like the role a play or the story gives birth to the next story. And this concept then therefore coming up with this playmaking method called story circles, which centers on the ethics of we build from what people want. So we build from the stories that they have, we build from the stories that they want to tell, we build from the stories that they want to go to. So we didn't create work, we didn't write the script out, we only created what they wanted to create. And then so this was one of the plays that we did, which was called Dipina tsa Monyanyako. And the meaning behind the play is that it's songs of joy. So they wanted to create songs and thinking about that intersection of how song became a space for activism for them. A song became a place where we can change characters through, and song also became just a way where we are asserting political and ideas about what does it mean to live. So most of the songs were songs that that they knew from their lives, but also that had meaning. So I'm going to play one short clip. You may not understand the language, and it's okay. I think it's not about so much about, but it's so that you understand that there's something about how they created and wanted to make in their own way. Also, one thing to highlight is that so the play was also created and performed in their space where they wanted to create it. So in where we created with them, and the audience was their audience. They invited people over, and more importantly, what happened was we had no lights where we used to rehearse and make the play. So you'll see the lighting is very bad because we brought in other lighting from other sources. So let me share and Right. So the songs were used to intersperse to oh, I stopped sharing everything to intersperse our creation. So what happened was, so there were different stories that came from the creativity. So in terms of to be able to tell the different stories, we use song to kind of like to be transitional, to be the transitional tool. But more importantly for me, I wrote a paper on this around the story that song became also in South Africa. If you know, historically, we even talk about that the South African struggle was won through four-part harmony, right? That South Africans really are invested in this idea that song becomes a political tool around thinking, around making sense of the world, around theorizing ourselves into being. So therefore, song and this idea of stories that we were telling and stories that we were sharing became a place of creating, but also not only of creating, but it became a methodology of knowing. What was important for me was to also allow that the stories become a space for material possibilities and how we can also reimagine our lives and think about what does it mean to be Black women in the world. And then finally, to use performance as an analysis. Now I've gone through these different plays, so we've created a number of plays, Libo Mama, and then I also created my own play, Between Sisters. Now I'm trying to make sense of what is happening. Like, what does it all mean, right? So then I created a whole play called Postcards, Bodily Preserves. And the play was a way of having to think about what are the themes that came out from the experiences that I've had. Because I'm aware that everything that I've done is embodied, is in my body. So for me to therefore analyze the experience, I cannot just go and write and say, oh, this was what it means, but I had to perform it and engage in it. So I created a play called Bodily Preserves, and these two pictures are moments where the play was performed in different places. The play, I performed it 3 times, sometimes in Germany, the other one in Johannesburg, and not in the typical theater space. So part of what it also allowed for me to then do is to reimagine what then performance and theater means to a lot of us, and that it isn't just about the building, but it's also about where do we create and how do we create and how do we make living important for other people. And then care became a very important thing for that. Then care here is used as an analysis agency and creativity. And care is about embodied activity and a form of labor that we do, and especially when we are creating and making plays. And then therefore care becomes that exploration of what is those aesthetics of what it means to be ethical and to be caring and to be in creativity with other people. I think I will stop here. I'm not sure where my time is, but I think I will be okay here. Um, yeah, that's me. Yes.
Thank